Hey, kia ora, and welcome everybody to another episode of Big Life Mindset, the podcast that is designed to help you live a life you love so you love life more. My name is Eddie Rakanui, and this podcast is in the top 10% most shared worldwide on Spotify. I'm a leadership coach for winners of the Westpac Bank Innovation Awards. I've created online courses to build your confidence at work. I also happen to be a serial entrepreneur, a business owner, and a life coach. But above everything else, I'm living a life that I absolutely love. Today's episode is going to give you some tips on uh, what are we going to do today, eh? I'll tell you what we're going to do today. I'm going to tell you how, in the course of 12 hours, you can change your life from having like a really dark and shitty moment to something that creates an environment that you can benefit off for days and days afterwards. And I'm going to give you my own example. That's how I know this works, okay? So by the end of this, you're going to have an example of how it works and how you can do it yourself. So first, some context. Okay, so about 4 days ago, a bit longer than that now, about 5 days ago, I had an absolute bust up with our eldest child. It was just one of those really horrible experiences, and her and I were basically just. It wasn't that we were. It wasn't that we were like getting it in each other's faces or anything, but it was just a really negative experience. This happened early in the morning after pretty much everyone else had gone off to school or other bits and pieces, and it was just a real situation, one of those clashes where people are tired, people are grumpy. This is not excusing any of the behavior, by the way. This is just the reality of the situation. And so her and I clashed. We had this dust up, and then we're just in an environment where it's like that. Sometimes it can be hard to pull yourself out of it. Now, as the adult of the two, it really is on me to not only know better, but demonstrate better. And if you had have asked me immediately afterwards how I would have rated my performance as an adult and a parent, I actually would have given myself a really high rating, about an 8. Afterwards, though, like as the passage of time kind of carried through, then I started to reevaluate how I'd actually performed in that situation. You ever have that happen? In an interview, you think you did really poorly straight afterwards, but actually did really well, or vice versa. You thought you did really well, but then as a little bit of time passes, that hindsight starts to kick in. You think, oh, actually, I could have done that quite a lot better. So that was my experience. Now, about so throughout the whole day, I had just it got worse and worse in my mind, and I didn't have anybody to bounce it off with really, because I was only myself and our eldest that had this interaction. And so I couldn't really get anybody's honest opinion on it, of how it unfolded in real time, because there was no one else there. But I did fill in Debbie when she got home, and she'd also heard our she'd also heard our eldest perspective as well prior to Debbie and I catching up. And so she had a reasonably good handle on what had happened. And I went away. So her and I talked about it. She did a bit of umming and ahhing. Debbie did. She does this thing, actually, it's really clever, where she'll just say things like, "Oh, so how did you feel like you handled the situation?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I did so well." Patting myself on the back. Well done, Eddie. You're the man. But it's when a question comes like that to me, I'm like, oh, she's giving me the space to analyze my own performance, I guess, a bit more. And so I did throughout the day, and then I started to actually feel bad about it and worse. And I was like, oh man, what have I done? I could have handled this so much differently. And I started to beat myself up a little bit. Now, for those of you who are recently joining, you'll know that I make a lot of effort I put in a lot of effort to be a better person. Like, I really do. People talk about it, and that's cool, but I'm very much a doer. If I see an opportunity to improve myself, then I'll give it a shot. It's one of the reasons why I named our son Kaizen, which is a play on the name, the Japanese concept Kaizen, which means continuous improvement. Actually, the phrase means improvement, but it's evolved to mean continuous improvement. And so I take this kind of stuff seriously, right? And so I was like, okay, how can I get better at this, and so on and so forth. And so Debbie giving me the space to kind of think about that was really useful. It was useful, but then it was also a bit like a kind of a double-edged sword, because it meant that when I was looking at my performance and how I did, I was like, oh, probably shouldn't have said that or did that. So fast forward a few hours, and I go out and I catch up with one of our besties, and he and I do some gardening together. I'm not much of a gardener. I'm not really a green thumb. I appreciate those people that are, and I like doing a little bit. Like I'm growing some avocado plants from seed, in my cabin, and I love flowers. Pansies are my favorite, by the way. And so I love that kind of thing. But actually, just potting and planting and all the rest, I don't. I normally find other things to do, even though it's really enjoyable. But it was during that point in time where we were planting that I had this. I'd been going round and round and round circles. And actually, not long before, I should add this, because I know that there's a lot of people that have very set opinions about THC. And it's often people who, in my experience, it's often people who haven't actually seen the benefits of THC have some of the most, I don't know, I'll just use a phrase, jihadist opinions about it. It's usually anti. I can tell you from my experience that, there's definitely some pitfalls with using THC, much like there's pitfalls with using paracetamol, ibuprofen, and zopiclone, and any other prescription drugs that you will get thrown at you. My experience of THC, those pitfalls aside, I draw massive, massive benefits out of it. I got a prescription for it however many months ago, and so I had an edible prior to going to do the gardening. If you're not familiar with edibles, an edible is basically where you get the THC. So THC is just it's the psychoactive compound that's in marijuana. There's other bits and pieces, but just like broadly speaking, this is the bit that gets you high. So we get the bit that gets you high, and you put it in, you make a butter out of it, and then you use that butter to make cookies or cakes or pancakes or anything that you can eat that has a butter, you can use it in. And you can even use like coconut oil and that kind of thing. So I had an edible, I had a biscuit, and it's about the size of a 50 cent, it's probably about the size of two 50-cent pieces in New Zealand. I don't know what that is everywhere else. And if you're in the States, my bad. Think of something that's about, I don't know, twice the size of your eyeball. Yeah, that'll do it. So I eat this thing that's about twice the size of your eyeball, and it takes about half an hour for it to kick in. And then when it does, I'm out doing my gardening thing, and I'm going round and round and round circles beforehand about this experience that I'd had, and what I could have done better. And then like a bolt of lightning, it was like bang. Oh, that's what I'll do. And I kid you not, in the blink of an eye, I had been thinking about coming home and like the punitive measures, the things with the consequences I could have done for Maya for her behaviors, and how I could quite quickly rationalize that her behavior and all of that whole engagement, that whole interaction, her behavior sucked. Now, I'm only mentioning her name because she let me mention her name in another format in a reel that we went and did. So otherwise I wouldn't. But I could have put together a compelling argument for why, or compelling case for why her behavior sucked way more than mine did, and she was the driving cause of a lot of that. I could have put forward an argument like that. Whether it would have been accurate or not, put it in a court in front of a judge, I don't know. But then as I'm gardening, I had that moment, that lightning bolt moment, and I go from, I could do this to her, and I could tell her for this, and I could point out this, and I did, and I had maybe half a dozen things I could have used. And like I say, just like bang, just like that, I went from that to, you know what, the best thing I should do right now is actually go and take her out for dinner. the best thing I could do right now is to focus on what we want the relationship to look like, not where it's come from. And that's exactly what we did. That is exactly what happened. Went from having that really dark, shitty moments, and a lot of that negative self-talk, and then overanalyzing the situation and just being like wanting to lash out kind of thing. Because, when you're hurt, whether you're hurt by an adult or a child, like, you're hurt. And you want to, one of the defense mechanisms you can use, and I sometimes do, is I lash out, which is not an ideal one. And to be fair, pat myself on the back, I am getting better. So yeah, that was that situation. And then after I finished at my mate's place with the planting, came home. They'd actually already eaten dinner at home. It was just a timing thing that didn't work out for me. But they'd finished dinner, and I'd still said, right, I'd like to take Maya out for dessert. Before that, though, I walked in the door, and the family's finished eating. About 5 of them are in the lounge, and one's in the dining room. And I'm standing in the point of those two, where I can speak to everybody in one hit. Pardon me. And I said, look, I just want to take your attention just for a few moments while I say something. So I made sure I had everybody's attention, and I apologized unreservedly for what had happened in the morning. Now, when I apologized, I made sure that everybody knew that I was apologizing. It was honest, it was heartfelt, and I meant it. I didn't talk about anything else that anybody else had done in that situation. To me, the critical part of all of that was that I made that apology, and that it was done in an environment where everybody could see me doing that. And particularly for the kids, where they saw that no matter who you are, if you apologize for something, own it. Own it. Don't do one of those apologies where you kind of mumble it under your breath, or you say it as fast as you can and say, oh, I've done my bit. No. Walk through it. Walk yourself through it, even if it stings. And I can tell you, the first couple of words was stumbling out of my mouth, and I'm not short of like words to say, right? Like, I can open my mouth and shit falls out all the time. But on this situation, even though I'd rehearsed it, first couple of words, stumbled. And I knew that that was pride talking. That was my ego trying to hold me back. And I knew as well that I meant it. It was a heartfelt apology. So I did that. I apologized, and I made sure that, the kids understood why I was apologizing, and, whether Maya accepted my apology or not, it was secondary. The most important learning there for everybody was, no matter how cool you think you are, when it comes time to apologize, you do it properly. So that's what I did. And, within seconds, that had opened the communication channel again between myself and Maya. And man, it went like a skyrocket after that. It was really beautiful. We both got to, we gave each other a big hug and just properly reconnected again. And I like to think that apology and her willingness to accept that apology, because it was real, made that situation one from being really sour to actually, this is a beautiful moment. And to her credit, we talked about it later on. We went out for dinner. She actually asked my mum to come out as well, Nanny, who we look after at home. She said, "Can we take Nanny out for dessert?" Oh, yeah, man, let's do that. I love that. And to her credit, she said, you know, I am kind of glad that we had that experience, the bus stop. I was like, "Oh, why is that?" She said, "Well, because the silver lining was that we got to, what was her words? I feel like it was connect, but maybe I'm just putting words in her mouth. I don't know, but you know what I mean." Her sentiment was that we got to reconnect, and it might not have happened if we hadn't have had that bust up. There wouldn't have been a silver lining for us to have. So we went out for dinner, or we went out for dessert. Ended up being another dinner. Actually, it was really cool. We went to Mama Brown's in town, which does really cool, like big servings. So me, her, and Nanny hung out at a table and had ribs and chips and everything else, and then milkshakes and all the rest. And we were just stuffed by the time we got home. Okay, so after that experience, following morning wake up, Debbie and I having great quality time together. My mindset has moved 180 degrees. In that short period of time, my mindset has just shifted completely. Now, that mindset shift from where I was to where I ended up lasted for 4 days, where I was on this incredible life high, and everything else that kept coming after it was like bonus life material. And all the things we were doing, all the things I was doing throughout the day, picking the kids up just from school, dropping them off, ice baths, quality time with Debbie, podcasting, creating reels, blah, 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 blah. It was just layer upon layer upon layer of what I call bonus material. That's where everything is just bucket filling stuff. I might have a conversation with someone and it's just a really cool conversation and it just tops up my bucket a little bit more. Or I might have gone and hung out with the kids on the playground for an hour. And once again, it just fills up my bucket a lot more. In case you can't hear that, that's our 2-year-old running around, and she probably won't want to be getting dressed right now because she's just got out the bath. This is one of those, if you're a parent, you know the situation. You can't by the way, you can't chase the kid. That doesn't work. You have to get them to come to you. They've got to come willingly. Otherwise, it's like trying to dress an eel. So that was what happened. We turned around that situation. We were both involved in creating it. We were both involved in carving out a solution towards it as well. If she had have just said, "No, I don't accept your apology, you can get stuffed," it would have been a very different kind of feeling there. I suspect that later on she would have thought, "Oh, I probably should have accepted that dad's apology." And I would have felt like, you know what? I feel like she's missed an opportunity, but I've done my bit. I did the thing that I needed to do, and that was to make sure that public apology happened and where it came from. Now, that sense of, I don't really know how to describe it. It's almost like a life, life well-being amplified or life amplified or something along those lines, where you just have bucket filling moment, like back to back to back to back to back, and then you follow up, you wake up the next day and it's just rinse and repeat, and it just carries on and on and on. Because there's times during our lives, right, where you're at the other end of the spectrum, it just feels like it's shit, and it's shit day after day after day, and you're like, what's going on here? The reason why I felt like this is a really powerful story to tell is because I've been at both ends of those spectrum. Like I've talked at length about how I was once in a job and I was massively, I was under huge amounts of stress, anxiety. I was being bullied by my boss. I was overworked. It was a horrible existence. And that happened for months. I tell this story so that anybody who is going through a situation where you're like, this is just not cool, life sucks. At that point in time, life might suck. I'm not going to try and wet it down or anything. Like, life might just really suck. However, I know from experience that you can flip that right around. You can move yourself out of that. So no matter how dark that hole is and how much the blackness feels all-encompassing and the weight on your shoulders is just overbearing, there is absolutely a way out of that. And there is not only a way out of it, but there is a way where that is just no longer part of your life anymore, where those deep, dark troughs are minimized. And you might have dark periods, but they aren't as dark and they aren't as deep and they don't last as long. And then you start to migrate into a place where you have more positive experiences, and that positivity becomes contagious and it transfers into other facets of your life. And that's exactly the kind of life that I feel I'm living. It's exactly the kind of day-to-day example that can take place, where in one moment it can be really shit and it can feel all-encompassing, but you also know, hang on a minute, this won't last forever. Not only that, I know how to get myself past this. So yeah, thanks very much for listening to this. I really do appreciate you taking the time. You know, I talk about, living a life you love so you love life more. When you're having those dark times, it's really hard to think that this is part of a life that I'm going to love. And sometimes that's just the case. Like, it's just a dark period in your life. Being able to switch it around, being able to improve your situation, being able to change your perspective, being grateful for the things you have, like all of these are very achievable things to do. If you're wondering how to do them, either roll through a whole bunch of the episodes that I've already recorded, or book some time in with me. I'm not joking when I say I know how to coach people into this kind of life. Like, this is a thing that I do. This is the thing that I excel at. And this is the thing that I love doing. I love doing it. For those of you who you've already heard me talk about this concept called Ikigai, Ikigai. Ikigai is where, if you can imagine 4 circles and a Venn diagram. If you're not sure what a Venn diagram is, it's basically where you've got 4 circles of something and they overlap. And the bits that they overlap, that's kind of what makes a Venn diagram Venn. There's 4 circles in Ikigai. One circle is something that you're good at. One circle is something that the world needs. One circle is something that people are prepared to pay for. And one circle is something that you're really passionate about. When you get all 4 of those overlapping, then essentially you've got something that you're good at, something the world needs, something that they're prepared to pay for. And by the way, you're passionate about doing it as well. That is me with life coaching. You want to describe it in a nutshell? That's what I do. If you would like to book in time with me, please do so. You'll find a link in the show notes. I might even throw some other stuff in there as well. And also, just quickly, I've just wrapped up a 48-hour challenge as well. So in the course of that, over the last couple of days, I set myself a 48-hour challenge where I recorded as many tips and strategies for people, and I put them out onto social media, out into the ether. I think I came up with like 35 of them, and that was that without even trying, if I'm perfectly honest. I mean, I still did every other part of my life. Got blazed, went gardening, hung out with the kids at the park a lot, and still managed to crack out all these videos. So yeah, check out my social media channels, check out my YouTube channel as well, because we are making some big waves there soon. And I've just uploaded a time management one that you're going to absolutely love. Like, if anybody ever asks you the question, how have you been? You say busy, you're going to wipe that from your vocabulary and you're going to say, I've been super productive. Awesome. All right. Don't forget, check out the show notes, book in time with me, and live a life you love so you love life more. All right. Bye for now.